Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Sean Huggins and this is Europe with Hugs. Thank you so much for being here. I am an American looking to learn more about life in Europe through watching silly videos and stuff on the internet with you guys, and today I have a very interesting video planned. Check this out. 20% tariffs. Thanks. This is why Trump could actually be great for Europe's economy. I've been watching a lot of videos like this on this channel recently because I feel like it's very topical, obviously, very current events based, and it's at the very least very interesting, so we're gonna continue on today. So let's waste no time and see how could Trump actually be great for Europe's economy. Let's find out.
This video was brought to you by Incogni. On Wednesday, Trump slapped insane tariffs on all of America's major trading partners.
This is a couple of weeks old, by the way.
Including a 20% flat tariff on
But still.
the EU. Well, this has caused some understandable anxiety in Brussels. But in certain respects, America's protectionist turn could create some incredible opportunities for the EU.
Let's see.
So in this video, we thought we'd explain why, while Trump might cause some pain in the short term, in the long term, this could be genuinely great for the European economy.
Okay. My guess is that the overarching theme will be that Europe will have to build itself up from within and become more united as a union. All the countries come together as a more strong union, and that will boost Europe's economy without having to rely quite so much on outside sources. And I don't know, that's my guess. Let's see.
We're getting remarkably close to 1 million subscribers, and currently 72% of you haven't yet subscribed. So lend us a hand and subscribe today. So, the first thing to make clear is that Trump's trade wars will incur some short-term pain. Europe exports a lot of stuff to the US, and Trump's 20% tariff will mean less demand for these goods. And it's not even like any other country can really replace the US in this respect. American consumers just buy more stuff than basically anyone else, and the uncertainty created by Trump's trade wars will probably dampen consumer demand elsewhere too. Trump's trade wars will also exacerbate anxieties about Europe's deindustrialization, given that a large fraction of these exports are industry adjacent, and that Trump's 54% tariff on China risks inviting a flood of Chinese exports, as Chinese businesses are now effectively unable to sell to the US market.
Dang, okay, so not only can America directly affect Europe, but also because America is affecting the global economy, that will also affect other countries outside of Europe, which will then also affect Europe too. So it's really affecting everybody. Interesting. Okay, let's continue.
Redirecting their goods to Europe instead, pushing down prices further and putting more strain on their European competitors. However,
China.
in the medium to long term, there are reasons to think that Trump could actually be, well, really quite good for the European economy, for at least 5 reasons. The first is that the uncertainty that Trump has created in the US has made America way less investable, and at least some of this money that would have been invested in the US will now shift into the EU. This is largely why, since January, European stocks have massively outperformed American stocks, as investors shift their cash from the US into the EU.
Damn.
The Stoxx 600, an index covering 600 European companies, is currently slightly up in this period, while the S&P 500, another index covering the 500 biggest American companies, is down an astonishing 8%.
Wow, that's a huge difference when you look at the scale of what those percentages actually represent. That's crazy.
It's worst quarter since the pandemic. This is a marked reversal of a long-running trend, because since...
Whoa, dang, look at this. S&P 500 is greatly outperforming the Stoxx 50? I thought it was Stoxx 600. Well, still, whatever it was. It used to be very close, and then boom, 2009. Such a giant leap forward. That is staggering. Okay, let's continue.
Since really 2009, European stocks have generally underperformed US ones.
Wow.
Another reason that investors
What the heck happened in 2009, though? That's the question.
Money from the US to the EU is the erosion of the rule of law that we've seen under Trump. As well as Trump's rhetorical assault on the judiciary, there have also been some glaring cases of blatant corruption. For instance, crypto entrepreneur Justin Sun was being investigated by the SEC until he bought $75 million of crypto tokens from World Liberty Financial, a crypto venture associated with Trump. And then, well, the SEC suddenly dropped the suit. Now, fretting about rule of law might...
And this video, like I said, was made 3 weeks ago. There are countless more examples since then, which is interesting.
Seem like a soppy liberal indulgence, but upholding the rule of law is actually just good for the economy. And that's because investors will only invest if they know that contracts will be enforced and disputes litigated in good faith. Anyway, the second reason is human capital. In short, America is becoming a less attractive place to live and work, and Europe can benefit from this by attracting smart people who would otherwise go to the US and drive up US economic growth. The number of Americans moving to Europe was already on the rise before Trump.
What is this? Number of American residents. Wow, look at this. Germany, number 1 by a mile. Wow, interesting. That must be probably a lot of military and ex-military for Germany, but still, even these other countries down here got a lot of people, I feel like.
There's a number of Americans saying they wanted to leave the US, with Gallup polling from the last year finding that a record 21% of Americans wanted to permanently relocate to another country.
21%.
But it's not just about Americans moving to Europe. It's also about non-Europeans and non-Americans looking to immigrate. Again, America was already becoming a less attractive place for international immigrants, and this trend will presumably accelerate under Trump. And this is especially true for students.
Okay.
For decades, America has been one of the most desirable places to study, but Trump's assault on American universities, which he sees as bastions of the liberal establishment, will presumably make it less attractive for international students.
Damn.
After all, who would want to go to an American uni when there's a chance that you could be arbitrarily detained or deported because of something you've posted on social media? Or even just because you come from a so-called unfriendly country. These students will probably instead opt for unis in the EU or UK, giving Europe an upper hand in terms of human capital. Anyway, the third reason that Trump could be good for the EU is that it might actually help Europe to re-industrialize. Trump's tariffs are nominally about bringing manufacturing and industry back to the US, because in theory, tariffs will force companies who want to sell in the US market to set up factories and manufacturing centers in America. However, because they've been designed so poorly, they'll probably have the reverse effect.
That is the plan that Trump apparently had for the tariffs. If you put high tariffs on everything, then you bring manufacturing back to America. But surprisingly, that isn't quite how it works now, is it? Let's continue.
Trump's universal 10% tariff, for instance, will make all components more expensive, which will ultimately reduce the competitiveness of American manufacturers. If Trump wanted to, say, rejuvenate America's auto industry, he should have just tariffed cars, not everything, including car parts, because that actually puts American car makers at a disadvantage too. More generally, building out factories takes years of steady investment, which is unlikely to happen given the uncertainty surrounding Trump's trade policy. Plus, the risk that it could all just be undone by his successor. Industrial companies looking to build new factories in a predictable business environment might well turn to the EU instead.
Yeah, if you are a giant company like Volkswagen or any giant global company and you're looking at building a facility to manufacture your product, especially a high-ticket item, high-ticket product like an automobile, you're going to have to invest like decades of time, because not only is it going to take probably 10 years just to get all the planning done, the bureaucracy, picking a location, buying all the land that you need, designing everything, and then actually building out a giant factory kind of a place. Let's say that whole entire process takes like 10 years and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars or euros or whatever. You're not going to want to spend all that time and money and then have to think, oh, maybe we have to move it in 5 years or 10 years. You want that place to be functioning for the next 50 years or 100 years. You want that place to never have to really leave so that you can get the money back for your time and money investment into that infrastructure. So if you just raise all these tariffs and you're like, well, you got to bring manufacturing back to America, well, it's going to take a little bit of time, dude. Like, obviously.
Especially given that the EU is in the process of developing a more active industrial policy.
Oh.
The fourth reason that Trump could ultimately be good for Europe is that he could force European policymakers to boost domestic demand. As evidenced by Europe's reoccurring trade surpluses, the EU has long relied on exports to fuel its economy. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does leave you vulnerable to external trade shocks, and is one of the big reasons that the EU economy has struggled so much over the past few years. While the best performing European economies have almost all been those with relatively strong domestic demand. The sudden withdrawal of the American market could, in the long term, help Europe to rebalance its economy towards domestic demand, rather than exports, which could make it more resilient going forwards. The fifth reason is a little speculative, but there's at least a good chance that the euro could go some way to replacing the dollar as the world's reserve currency, i.e. the currency that central banks and other big financial institutions like to hold in their foreign exchange reserves.
Interesting. Well, that would destroy the value of the US dollar, but then again, I guess the value of the US dollar is going to shit anyways, so I don't know. Could happen, I guess. We've done a whole
video on this recently, but the TLDR is that Trump's unorthodox economic policy risks undermining the dollar's reserve status. And the fact that the dollar has declined at the same time as American stocks suggests that this process is already underway. That's because in the past, the dollar has normally strengthened during times of uncertainty, because investors used to see it as a safe asset, which is why they liked holding it in their reserves. If the euro were to replace the dollar in this respect, it would both strengthen the euro, helping to boost imports and domestic demand, and potentially allow European countries to borrow at lower rates, in the same way that the US gets to. So, there you have it. While Trump's far-reaching tariffs and wider policies will cause some pain for Europe, they also present the continent with some pretty considerable economic opportunities.
Whew. All right. Well, I think he said it pretty well in the video that there is so much uncertainty nowadays, especially surrounding U.S. politics. This video is already a couple of weeks old, and it already seems like old news. You could probably make a new one of these videos every day and still have it be relevant. That's how quick things are changing. But anyways, I'm curious what you guys have to say about it, since you are the Europeans after all. So what do you think? Do you think that this could actually strengthen Europe's economy? I'm curious what you have to say about it, so let me know down in the comments section below. But that's all the time that I have for today, so thank you guys so much for being here, and as always, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.